In your headline, why is it so hard to make friends in St. Louis, Aisha?
Well, some people took issue with the headline. There were a few people who disputed the assumption in the headline and said it's not any harder here than any other new city that you're in. But the vast majority of people, and there were hundreds of comments, emails, phone calls, agreed and said they were new here. They found it harder to make friends, and these are some of the reasons why. That people who are native, born and raised here, they have less use or inclination to make new friendships with other people.
But is that necessarily St. Louis, Aisha, or is that just generally human nature?
Well, it's definitely human nature, but certain factors will make it more likely to happen in a certain area versus another area. So when you have a Catholic river town and there's been fewer transplants here, and you have a majority of the population that stays, was born and raised here, and perhaps for generations, then their ties and their roots are kind of already filled up, as opposed to another city where you might have a lot more newcomers, or you might have a lot more transient residents. And so I think that's why sometimes in St. Louis, given the fact that there are legacy economies here, there are businesses that have been here for generations, there are people that go and come back, and families tend to stay here or stay closer together. It can be harder to break into, and especially since people value that quite a bit here. I mean, it's one of the few places where you get asked where you went to high school, as people do want to make, they want to know how you're already connected to them.
Hey, Aisha.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
And you bring up another part of your story, which I found really interesting. You focus on a man who was a replant, which
Yes.
I think there are quite a few replants in St. Louis.
And okay, so replant is someone who grew up, born and raised here, grew up here, and then went away, never kind of expecting to come back. And then he actually, Anthony Bartlett, who started this company that I profiled, did come back after college. And he had a hard time because even though his middle school friends and high school friends were still here, he was looking for also making some new friends and kind of branching out. But he found pressure, the people he'd known before, if he went out with them, to kind of hang out with them. And, there was sort of, he described it in an interesting way, that natives here have a little bit of suspicion of interlopers, of new people. It's not that they'd ever be unfriendly to them, but they don't understand why you need to talk to them or try to be friends with them. You already have your friends.
Is there a way through the comments or through your interviews to navigate the St. Louis friend scene?
Yeah, I mean, there were lots of suggestions. And, I'm a transplant here. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and now I've lived here almost 20 years. And I feel like I've made deep, great, wonderful friendships here. But it did take a little bit longer. I'd lived in other cities and larger metropolitan cities. This was the smallest metro area I'd lived in. And it had the least diversity of people when I got here. That's changed now. So I did feel like it took me, maybe it took like 6 months to a year before I felt like I had a good crowd of people that I considered good friends, whereas in other cities, might have only taken a month, before I felt like I had people I could just call up or hang out with or go places. So this was the advice that Anthony had and was true for me too. If you can make a friendship with someone who is a native-born person here or is very well established here, and go with them to events or social groups or parties or their networks, and you have someone vouching for you, you're kind of on the buddy system, that makes you kind of blessed. And it really opens up doors for you, and people are willing to trust the fact that you've been vouched for by someone. So that's one thing. And another thing are the things that work for people anywhere. You get involved with either a church, a volunteer group, a hobby, a sport, something that you're passionate about that you love to do, then you meet other people who are passionate about or part of the same community. I mean, I got very involved with our mosque here, and I met a ton of people there. And so you kind of have to find those niches where you have something built in common, and then hopefully there'll be someone else there who's new. And, join a book club, something like that. You'll make friends eventually.
Because that's the thing. I mean, you just can't sit at home and expect friends to come to you. You
Oh,
know,
no, that
I mean,
doesn't happen anywhere. Yeah.
right. I mean, you have to put yourself out there and be willing to meet new friends, and besides friends that may just be your coworkers, because there are a
Well,
lot
and
of
Anthony
opportunities.
I agree with you. And Anthony made an interesting point. He said the people who are happiest with their friendships here are the ones who are willing to have intergenerational friends, like have friends of different
Yes.
ages, who are willing to like maybe have friends who live in different parts of town, and who are willing to embrace some diversity in their friendships. So, that's absolutely true too. I mean, if you're willing to do that and not say that I only want to be part of this one group, like, if you're a young mom and you only want to hang out with the cool moms in your daughter's preschool, but they've all known each other since preschool, you might have a hard time making friends with a crowd that's already very well established and not looking for newcomers.
Right.
But if you branch out a little bit, you will make friends.
And that's what I found when I moved here, and I've been here a long time. Kelly and I were talking off the air, but I found St. Louis over the years, it took a while. I found it to be very segmented as well.
Yeah.
And maybe you found the same thing, Aisha, that you would kind of, as you are branching out, you move from segment to segment. Some people, even within St. Louis, are afraid to do that jump from whether it's South County to West County to Midtown, or whether it's, generational or... But if you're willing to make those jumps and open your options, it can be very fulfilling.
It is, and you're right. Like I think the rivers are these huge mental boundaries here too. I mean, there are people who never venture out of either the Metro East or St. Charles County. And there are people who live in the county who never go to the city, and vice versa. And it's funny because I work on the city. I mean, I work at the Post-Dispatch, so I have a lot of great friends there who live in the city also. And whenever I invite them out to the county where I live, I hear so much moaning, like, oh, we have to pack snacks, we have to bring water with us, we have to drive so far. And I'm like, okay, yeah, very funny, it's not that far. But then when I go into the city, sometimes my friends from the county, well, I'll hear the same thing, like, oh, it's so dangerous, and it's so far, where are we going to park? And, that is something that I find to be very unique to St. Louis, because when I go back to Houston, where I grew up, no one thinks twice about getting in the car and driving 45 minutes to go see a friend.
Right.
That is so
They don't
true.
think twice about it.
I'm like, I don't want to go past the Galleria to come visit you. But I do agree with you. It's so important to I have friends of all ages, backgrounds, and to really have those rich friendships. I think it's important that you do have friends
It
that are
makes your
different.
life richer.
But
for
here's the
sure.
deal, Aisha. I think your next column should be, how difficult is it to date in St. Louis?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, because
that was
that's
one thing-
tough.
My
Yes,
wife
and
doesn't
Anthony
want me
said-
to date.
This is a difficult town to date in. It's an easy town to get married in, and I'm right about that.
Yes. I've never heard it
Yeah.
put that way, but that's very true. Aisha Sultan, thank you very much. A fascinating article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on making friends. It's going to be a great weekend. People need to go out and make some new friends this weekend.
Bye, guys. I
Great
enjoyed
talking
seeing
to
you.
you.
Thank you. 8:48.